Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our initiative Mission Mains 2022. And today, being Thursday, we are taking up economy and agriculture. Now, these are the topics that we have taken up. All of them are important, are there in the news, so we are taking it up. Okay, today, one more thing came to my mind when I was preparing these questions. So, one thing that came to my mind was the issue of the informal sector, informal workers. So that is again important. We'll take it up later. So this thing. Then besides this, there is also a theme known as casualization of the formal sector or casualization of the organized sector. So this is a possible theme on which UPSC can ask. Right. So this I have not taken up. Instead, I've focused on the migrant workers. Now, before going forward with the questions, this is a program that I introduced. It's a very cost-effective way of preparation. So if you're interested, you want to know more about it, you can ping me on my WhatsApp, or you can also fill out the Google form. Now, coming to the questions. So, first question is about labor reforms. Now, mind you, it is not really asking you labor codes, but only about labor reforms. So within labor reforms, there is something known as labor codes. Okay, so question is very simple. What are the key objectives of long pending labor reforms? So you have to start by talking about what are labor reforms, brief introduction. Then state the objectives of labor reforms, why we need, or whatever are the objectives over here, do that. And then these reforms have been long pending, especially this rationalization of the labor laws. So what are the reasons for it? So mention that. Okay, before going forward with the pointers, briefly, let me give you some context. And in fact, before giving you some context also, I have this for you. So this is the Labor Ministry website. So Labor Reforms Initiative, right? So things that the government has been doing. So one is the codification of labor laws at the union level as well as only at the union level. So code on wages, the code so for wages, then working conditions, safety and health of workers, code on social security. Social security means pension, provident fund, insurance, all those things, and industrial relations code. So relations of the workers with the management, all that. Shram Suvidha portal. Then there are more other schemes actually not mentioned over here. Maternity Benefit Amendment Act, Employee Compensation Act, right? So there are a number of things besides the labor code. Now, when we talk about the labor reforms, so it is about, naturally, it is about the welfare of the labor. So this is one thing. There is also one thing that there are these lot of regulations, a lot of regulations, lot of laws, like about 200 plus laws are there they were there at the center level. For multiple things, there are a number of laws. So when there are a number of laws, there are a number of regulations, naturally it leads to harassment of people who are doing their business. Right? Inspector Raj, interference in work, bribery, all those things. It makes compliance very, very difficult. It affects ease of doing business. So one of the rationale of especially this labor code is ease regulations, so that compliance is easy, so that the informal sector moves into the formal sector and get the benefits of the government schemes. One attraction. Or companies from outside come and invest in India if the regulations are at par with those of the advanced countries. So that will be a great attraction. Okay, so that is the idea. So with this, what will happen is easing of the labor regulations. It will lead to more employment, right? It will lead to more employment. So in that sense, also it will lead to welfare of the workers. So these are the two dimensions. Predominantly, it is about easing of the regulations. Okay, so briefly, actually, I've told you about this objectives only. Now, naturally, people don't like sometimes when you ease the regulations, the worker parties, they may feel that the trade unions, they may feel that their interests would be compromised, and they are a significant chunk of the vote bank also. So, as a result of this, there is a lot of resistance, and the government is hesitant because of the great numbers that they have. Right, so this is the problem. Okay, so once you start with this labor thing, labor reforms, then you can briefly state the objectives. So one is the formalization to take place. Then easing of industrial relations, providing them fair wages, working conditions is simply the labor codes actually. Then codification of central labor laws. There are multiple laws, so reducing them, simplifying them, rationalizing them. This will promote ease of doing business. It will ease enforcement of contracts, contract between the employee and the employer, social security of the workforce, and also the gender dimension. So increase the participation of the women in the workforce. Now, I should have, but please find the data from the periodic labor force survey with reference to the participation of women in the workforce. I think it's around 27-25%. Okay, now what are the challenges? Naturally, first challenge is the resistance that is coming. Then the issue of cooperation of the states. Remember, the laws, labor laws, are of the union as well as that of the states. So if union eases it, it doesn't help as such until unless the states also ease it, because ultimately factories are operating on land and lands are in the states only. The states also have to ease, and states are also the implementing agencies. So cooperation with the states have to take it on board. So that is to be done. Okay. Then the issue of poor compliance. You may keep easing the regulations, but then the people have to comply with it also. The implementation of these thing has to improve. So implementation concerns are there. And imagine this labor reforms are for the welfare of the labor, and 90% of the workforce is actually working in the informal economy or unorganized sector. Both are different, but they overlap. So imagine 90% of the workforce. So since they are in informal, naturally, because informal means they are outside the purview of regulation, so they will not get the benefit of the labor reforms also. Okay, so these are certain things, and then most recently the emergence of these new concepts of gig economy, freelancers. So the traditional relationship of an employee and the employer, that is getting affected. The traditional relationship is that employee just does not work with the employer. The employer is also responsible for overall welfare of its people. But with the emergence of the concept of gig economy, where people are working in accordance with gigs or projects or on freelance basis, naturally this relationship gets affected. And what is happening is, theoretically speaking, it benefits, of convenience for both the employer and the employee. But employee doesn't really have a choice in most cases, where they are actually forced to work as freelancers, contractual labor, etc. Okay, so this is complicated. We need to bring in reforms in that light also. Then casualization of the formal economy. There may be a company, and this is happening actually. There are companies, let's say big automobile companies. So they are formal economy, but they have sublet or delegated the recruitment function to another party, which in turn is employing casual workforce or informal workforce. So they are not getting the benefits of social security, etc. They are minimum wages, etc. Then you can conclude by emphasizing the need for the labor reforms. Briefly, you have to do, no need to mention, really give a detailed this thing of the way forward, etc. is not required. It has not been asked. You don't have the word limit also. Okay, next question. This is about the migrant workers. So the pandemic-induced lockdown brought to the forefront the plight of the migrant workers. Basically, that's an introductory statement talking about the migrant workers. They are facing certain issues, so that has come to the forefront. So you have to obviously define or start by telling us about the migrant workers. Then, what are the issues that they face? So, issues, the plight of the migrant workers, and then what measures are to be taken. Now, naturally, before giving suggestions, what measures ought to be taken, there are already certain measures that have been taken, right? So, that have to come. Then, a conclusive conclusion just for the sake of closure. Or here you can also give a way forward because it says discuss. So, discuss gives you this flexibility. Now, before starting, one thing that you have to emphasize is that the migrant workers, the plight of the migrant workers, when we say we have to be mindful that migrant workers are again of two types. For example, a worker who's working person, skilled engineer working in the IT company, that is also a migrant worker, right? But we're not talking about them. They're comfortable. They're going because they're getting good packages. We are concerned about that workforce that is working in the informal sector. They have that workforce that have been pushed out of that place because there was economic distress in their place, in their native place. And they typically have low skill sets. The literacy levels are low. And naturally, because of all this, they will work in the informal sector. So this also has to come somewhere around the introduction. You can also give a fact about the population that is part of the migrant workforce. Now we have two basically, one contradictory. One is census 2011, which says 36 crore or 37%, and then we have the economic survey which says 20% or over 10 crore are the migrant workforce. Actually, this is internal migrants and this is migrant workers, so use this fact. Now, what are the challenges faced by them? Now, imagine these are people who are already disadvantaged. They are moved to the other state. Naturally, they would be living in slums. Their living conditions, their working conditions would be to their disadvantage. Plus, they are outsiders. You know, there is always this political movements which says that outsiders have come, our demography is getting affected, our interests would get affected, our children will not get the benefits. Shiv Sena Party, Maharashtra, this happened with reference to the Bihari migrant workers. Okay, so discrimination, they are vulnerable community. They don't get the social security benefits naturally because they are working in the informal economy. They are subject to coercion at work. They are far, far away from their home place. They are subject to coercion. They are at a disadvantage. Poor work conditions, inhospitable work conditions. And difficulty in availing government schemes. Now imagine a worker from Bihar goes to Maharashtra. So this person may be beneficiary of the BPL scheme, poverty elevation schemes, etc. But from the Bihar government, it's gone to Maharashtra, so he'll not get the benefit, not get the rations, because the ration is to be given at the level at his place, not at Maharashtra. So these are certain problems. So difficulty in availing government schemes, and these are the people who require the government schemes the most, the government intervention. So they are not getting. So one good thing has been done is the One Nation, One Ration Card. This was introduced. Then there are certain other initiatives like Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana, Swanidhi Yojana, right? So all these schemes are there. E-Shram portal. Then there is also a proposed national policy on migrant workers. Now beyond this, in the suggestions you can say that migrant workers must come under the purview of first of all, there should be data about the migrant workers that are there. There should be cooperation between the states. One is the state from where they have come, and the other is the host state. So that should be there. So there should be some sort of an arrangement between the governments. Okay, they should come under the ambit of the social security benefits, etc. And in the end, you can talk about that the need to address the issue of push migration. So that also you can mention. The rural distress that is there, all those things you can mention. Creation of employment in their home state, native state, that has to be done. That also should be done. Okay. Now coming to the issue of depreciation of the Indian rupee. So we have to hear what we have to do. What are the reasons for the depreciation of the Indian rupee? Stating its likely impact on the economy, suggest suitable steps that the government must undertake. So in your answer, you have to start with depreciation of Indian rupee. Right, so whatever number is there during the time of your exam. Right now it is at 79 rupees. Right, so from around 65 rupees to 70, now 79 rupees, it is depreciating very fast, and it is likely to go even depreciate even more. Okay, so you have to state this, then you give out the reasons. It's straightforward. You have to just mention the reasons and then give out the impact on the economy. And lastly, suitable steps. So naturally, this is a longer type of a question, so 250 words. So reasons are very simple. One is the high crude prices. They were already very high, and then the Ukraine-Russia war had taken place. Now, how does it affect depreciation? I hope you know this. We import in dollar terms. So if the crude appreciates, so let's say from $70 per barrel, it goes to $110 per barrel. In fact, some study had suggested that crude can go to $320 per barrel. Okay. So you're shelling out more dollars. India is shelling out more dollars to buy crude because this thing has increased by $40. So there is more demand for dollar. Or we can say there is less demand for rupee also. Now because of this, this dollar rupees movement, the dollar is also appreciating. So dollar 70 to 79 rupees. So overall price of crude is also increasing, plus the currency is also depreciating, and this will keep getting bad, unfortunately. The Ukraine-Russia war has intensified this. Then the exit of the foreign portfolio investments. Foreigners had invested in our country because they were getting good returns on debt as well as equity markets. But because of the overall weak macroeconomic indicators like increasing fiscal deficit, increasing inflation, concerns over recession, plus obviously depreciation of rupee. So they feel might as well go back to our home country, go back to US, Europe, and play safe. Plus, because of the inflation data across the world, inflation is taking place. So the central banks of the US as well as the European Central Bank has increased the interest rates. So they are, one is they don't have the currency risk. If they invest in India, there is a currency risk. So anyways, the rupee is going to depreciate. So you think about it. Let's say somebody invested $100 in India, right? So let's say made an investment of 7,000 rupees. So that person had to sell dollars, purchase rupees, and then make an investment. But if to get back these $100, the rupee has gone down to 79 rupees, so 7,900. Now he has to sell 7,900 rupees to get back $100. So his investment is, it's eroding. The value is eroding because of this. Right. So these points have to come in a flow. That's all. Then naturally, because of this, the current account deficit will increase. Imports will get more expensive because dollar is appreciating. It will lead to cost push inflation. The crude prices are increasing, fuel is increasing, vegetables are increasing, inflation is taking place. So cost push inflation. Then PMI so yesterday's newspaper talked about the Purchase Managers Index. So it said the confidence of industry is at a low because of the inflation, because of the weak macroeconomic indicators, etc. Then the cost of external commercial borrowing. We were buying more, we were borrowing from outside, investments in debt. So we're borrowing from outside because the rate, it was lower than the bank rate, the rate of interest that the outsiders were willing to pay. But now, because of the exodus of money from our country, the cost of borrowing will actually increase. Now, it is believed there is a silver lining that exporters will benefit because exporters are making something and selling it in dollars. So their benefit is in dollar terms. Then again, they will convert it into rupees, so they are benefited. So IT companies, etc., would benefit. But here again, it says that overall demand in the global economy is going to be low, and furthermore, besides IT, besides the service, there are other things. Overall inflation, the competitiveness of the exports will not be much. Now, what measures can be taken? RBI can conduct open market operations to stabilize the currency. They can issue sovereign bonds so that more dollars come, more foreign currency comes into our economy. Okay, India can consider having currency swap agreements with countries such as Russia, Iran, etc., and we can import crude, etc., in rupees. So that can be done. So that will reduce the reliance on dollars. Then one more suggestion is to curb imports of non-essential commodities or increase the interest rate of like gold, etc. So that not interest, the tax rate, import tariff, custom duties for them. So non-essential commodities. Then black money, bring the black money back into the country, all those things. Right, so that has to be done. Now coming to the next question, this is about the farm reforms. So farm reform or agrarian reform is the need of the hour to achieve the welfare of the agriculture sector. Discuss the statement with reference to the present state of agriculture. Right, so simple. What is the farm sector reforms? Why do we need it? And what measures are taken? Same flow has to be maintained. Now you can bring out some facts for urgency for bringing in the farm sector. Further, we have agriculture, which is facing a number of challenges that are there. So rural distress is there, the low yields are there, right? So number of issues are there. So the agriculture needs more reforms. It requires more investments, more private participation. And there is this unwillingness to tweak with the agriculture sector because naturally it's a very, very important vote bank. 70% of India's 65% of India is rural. 55%, around 50 to 55% of the workforce is coming from the agrarian agriculture, even though they constitute about 12 to 14% of the GDP. So some of the issues with the agriculture sector. One is the low crop yield. So crop yield means that from a particular area of land, how much are we producing? So even though we are the second largest producer of wheat and paddy, but overall our yield is very less. So it means our agriculture is not very efficient. Then we have a lot of dependence on monsoon. Right, around 45% is irrigated. The rest we are dependent on the monsoon. Monsoon is also known as the finance minister of India. So that is there. We need more investment. That is also part of reforms. Right. So it is not just limited to the farm bills, but there are a lot of other things that should be part of the reforms. So low share in global markets. So our agriculture exports have to increase. It is only 2.15%. So even though we are the largest producers, one of the largest, but our share in the global market is very less. Then the rural distress, indebtedness, farmer suicides. So this is a problem. Then the issue of market access. Right. So need to bring in market reforms, the laws of the state So APMC acts, etc. This has to be reformed. It has to be rationalized. There should be more participation of the private players. There should be more competitiveness in that regard. So we need to so within the market sector, we can also talk about having a common national market. So ENAM, E, National Agriculture Market, bringing in more logistic support, more warehousing, better storage capacity. So that has to be done. Refrigeration, right? So that can be done. Then we also need to we have to focus on the food processing. Then the issue of fiscal burden caused by the MSP, power subsidy, fertilizer subsidy, and because of unsustainable farming practices like cultivation of paddy in Punjab, which is a semi-arid area. So it is affecting groundwater depletion. It is leading to, because of the indiscriminate use of fertilizers, pesticides, it is affecting the ecology of that place. Okay, now we have some facts on farmer distress. I suggest you just take a screenshot over here. Okay, so some of the measures, so food processing, liberalization of the farm sector, improving agricultural institutions and governance systems, promotion of climate smart agriculture, zero budget national farming. I think climate smart agriculture should be clear, like paddy, the example I gave you. In fact, you can also talk about bringing green revolution to Eastern India. Reforms in the food procurement, now that is marketing reforms. So ENAM, warehousing infra should be improved. Then there's this interesting concept of warehouse receipts. So the idea is that farmers, when they give their produce to the warehouse, so that they can sell it at the later time when the market rates are high, so they can get a receipt from the warehouse that you have provided as the food, grains, vegetables, whatever. So when they get the receipt, so on the basis of that receipt, they can get credit, input credit. Right, so that is there. Then to bring in technology to bring the link between the scientist and to the farmer, we have to encourage farmer extension services via Krishi Vigyan Kendra. So this can pave a way for climate smart agriculture. This can pave way for micro irrigation, food processing. So all of this can take place because of this. The issue of low yields can be addressed. Okay, so this is it. Now coming to the next, discuss the major challenges that are ailing the power sector in India. You can start your answer by all the problems that we all are facing these days. So you can give a contextual introduction with reference to the power sector, power cuts, something to that effect you can do, right? So, or you can use these facts over here. Then one by one we will move forward. The major challenges. Okay, so here are certain facts over here with reference to the power sector. So to sustain a growth rate of 8%, we must grow our power generation capacity, and thermal sources accounts for 82%. So this is 2018 data. So even though we are looking at diversifying from thermal coal-based power plant to other means of electrification like solar, etc. Okay, so first of all, the first issue is inadequate generation. The demand is increasing at a much faster rate as against the power generation. So generation is not so much, it is not increasing at the same rate as that of the demand. Right, so now in the present times, because of this, what do we call that? Heat wave. Yeah, this heat wave that had taken place, prolonged heat wave. So demand for AC etc. was more, power generation could not keep up with that. The discoms, the people who supply electricity to our homes also could not keep up with the excess load, and therefore there were power cuts. So India's commercial energy supply must grow at a rate of 7% to meet the demand, but we are only able to add 20,000 megawatt per year. So that is not adequate. Furthermore, we have excess demand on coal. And in fact, in the recent times, there has been scarcity of coal across the globe. So this has been a problem. So we have not been able to diversify to alternatives specifically solar. Then underutilization of installed capacity. So we have installed capacity also, but we are not being able to utilize. Now, one reason is that maybe because government is not very transparent about all this. So there are, let's say there is huge amount of capacity, but distribution companies, the ones that purchase electricity from the generators, they are not able to, because of they are not able to, the ones that supply electricity to the households. So because of their weak financial conditions and the weak transmission, the overall demand from the household is there, demand is there, but because their capacity is weak, they are not procuring as much electricity. So overall underutilization is taking place because of the weakness in the discom sector. To rectify this, the government had come up with a scheme known as Uday. Next is poor performance of state electricity boards, which is actually the issues with the discoms. So state electricity boards are not actually distribution companies. So because of transmission distribution losses, incorrect electricity pricing, etc., etc., etc. You can see my Uday video also. It was the second video on our channel. So in that also we have discussed the Uday scheme in short. Limited role of the private and the foreign entrepreneurs in the power sector. Then shortage of inputs, the shortage of power, shortage of gas, so all those things. Right. So this you have to mention, and let's get back to the question. So discuss the major challenges. It depends on the word limit actually. So yeah. So if it is 150 types, then you will only talk about the challenges over here. If it is of a higher this thing, then you can talk about the way forward also. So you can make a separate heading, because discuss means charcha, discussion. So discussion could go anyways, as long as it talks about the power sector, you're fine, and the challenges. So what measures ought to be taken to rectify those challenges? Okay, so this concludes the session. So thank you for streaming in to Mission Mains 2022, our YouTube channel also, IS Primus.